You are now listening to The Cypress Room by the Quiet Kabin. By the time Isla Creed reached the end of Briarwater Road, the rain had turned the windshield silver. The road was not on any map newer than 1989. It curved through a low stretch of Louisiana marsh, where black water filled the ditches and cypress knees rose from the mud like knuckles breaking through skin. Spanish moss hung in long gray veils from the trees. Every few yards, the headlights caught the shine of water, the flash of a frog, the pale flutter of a moth. Isla kept one hand tight around the steering wheel and the other around the envelope in her lap. Her aunt had mailed it 3 days before she died. Not emailed, not texted. Mailed. With a stamp, a wax seal, and her name written in a hand so shaky it barely looked human. Inside had been one key, one black and white photograph, and 7 words. Come before they open the Cypress Room. That was all. No explanation, no apology, no will, no warning about the house waiting at the end of Briarwater Road. The photograph showed a long white inn with 2 wraparound porches and a roofline sharp enough to cut the sky. Behind it stood a wall of cypress trees, and in one upstairs window, almost hidden by glare, was the shape of a woman standing very still. Isla had stared at that photograph until her eyes hurt. She had never heard of the house. Her mother had never mentioned it. Aunt Lenora had certainly never mentioned it, and Aunt Lenora mentioned everything. Bad weather, bad men, bad wallpaper, the devil hiding in church hats. But never this place. Now, as Isla's headlights found the iron gate, she understood why. Mercy House Inn rose from the darkness like something the earth had tried to swallow and veiled. It was 3 stories tall, painted a white that had gone gray with age. Its windows were tall and narrow. Its porch posts were carved with twisting vines. The roof sagged slightly in the middle, as if the house had been holding its breath too long. At the peak of the highest gable, a weather vane, shaped like a heron, turned slowly, though there was no wind. The iron gate stood open. Isla stopped the car. Rain tapped the roof. The engine ticked. Somewhere beyond the trees, water moved with the patient sound of something dragging itself ashore. She should have turned around. Every reasonable part of her knew that. She was alone, 40 miles from the nearest town, answering a message from a dead woman about a room she had never heard of. But grief does strange things to common sense. It cuts holes in you. Then anything that looks like an answer can crawl inside. Isla drove through the gate. The gravel lane circled a dead fountain where a stone girl held an empty bowl. The front steps were slick with rain. One porch light burned above the door, amber and weak. A man stood beneath it. He was tall, narrow-shouldered, and dressed in a dark suit that looked too formal for the weather. His hair was silver, combed neatly back from a severe face. He held no umbrella. Rain blew across the porch and dampened his sleeves, but he did not seem to notice. Isla shut off the engine. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then the man lifted one hand. Not a wave, a summons. Isla took the envelope, stepped out into the rain, and crossed the drive. The man watched her climb the steps. "Miss Creed," he said. His voice was low and dry, with the faint rasp of tobacco and old sermons. Isla stopped 1 step below him. "How do you know my name?" "Your aunt said you would come." "My aunt is dead." "Yes," he said. "That is why you are late." Isla stared at him. Behind him, the front door stood open just enough for darkness to show through the crack. "Who are you?" she asked. "Gideon Rusk. I keep the house." "Keep it from what?" His eyes shifted toward the upper windows. "From remembering too loudly." Isla almost laughed, but the sound died before it reached her mouth. Gideon stepped aside. "You should come in. The rain here does not wash things clean. It only wakes them up." The foyer smelled of lemon oil, damp wood, and old flowers. A crystal chandelier hung above them, its bulbs flickering faintly. A grand staircase curved to the second floor. On the walls were portraits of people Isla did not know. Women with pearl buttons, men with watch chains, children with blank, solemn faces. Their painted eyes seemed turned not toward the door, but toward the hall on the left. At the end of that hall was a pair of closed cypress doors. They were darker than the rest of the house, nearly black, carved with herons, reeds, and crescent moons. Isla knew without asking. The Cypress Room. She felt the envelope tremble in her hand. Gideon closed the front door. The latch clicked softly, but the sound carried through the foyer like a lock dropped inside a coffin. "Where is everyone?" Isla asked. "Gone." "Staff? Guests? Owners?" "Gone," he repeated. "That is not an answer." "It is the kind this house gives." Isla turned on him. "I drove through a storm because my aunt sent me a key and a photograph. If you know why she wanted me here, tell me now." Gideon took off his wet gloves one finger at a time. "Your aunt owned half of Mercy House." "No, she didn't. She lived in a brick ranch outside Baton Rouge, and clipped coupons like winning money made her nervous." "People can live in one place and be buried by another." "What does that even mean?" "It means Lenora Creed tried for 41 years to stay away from this house. In the end, the house called her back. When she could not come, she sent you." Isla looked again toward the cypress doors. Paced snine. Something inside the room made a soft sound. Not a knock. Not quite. More like a fingernail tracing the grain of wood. Isla's throat tightened. "Is someone in there?" Gideon did not answer. "Mr. Rusk, is someone in that room?" "No one living." The foyer seemed to grow colder. Isla forced herself to breathe. 10. I want the truth. Plain. No riddles. Gideon studied her for a long moment. "Then you should sit down. Truth told standing has a way of knocking people over." He led her into a parlor lit by 2 lamps with amber shades. The furniture was covered in white sheets, except for a round table set with a tea tray. 2 cups, 1 pot, steam rising. Isla stopped in the doorway. "You knew I was coming tonight." "I knew someone would." "That is not the same thing." "In Mercy House, it is close enough." She did not sit until he did. The tea smelled of cloves and orange peel. Isla did not touch it. Thunder rolled over the roof. For a moment the lamps dimmed, and in that brief pulse of shadow, Isla saw writing on the parlor wall. Then the light steadied. The wall was blank. "What happened here?" she whispered. Gideon folded his hands on the table. Mercy House was built in 1912 by a river merchant named Hollis Vane. He made money moving sugar, timber, and things no family historian likes to name. It will not be the same gate. She stared at him, anger flaring because fear had nowhere else to go. "Listen to me very carefully, Mr. Rusk. I don't care what family ghost story my aunt dragged me into. I don't care who built this house or who sang in what room. I am not spending the night here." Gideon rose. "You already are." The chandelier in the foyer went out. Every lamp in the parlor followed. Darkness dropped hard and complete. Isla heard the teacups rattle. Then Gideon's voice came from somewhere near the window. "Do not answer if it calls your name." A whisper moved through the hall. Isla. Her blood turned cold. It was not Gideon's voice. It was her mother's. Not her mother's old voice, thin from the hospital bed. Her young voice, warm, clear, calling from somewhere just beyond sight. "Isla." Her eyes filled before she could stop them. Mama? Gideon's hand closed around her wrist. Do not. She jerked away. Let go of me! That is how it opens you. It wears the voice of what you miss. The whisper came again, closer. Baby, come here. Isla covered her mouth. Her mother had called her that until the day she died. Baby. One word, and the years broke open. The hospice room, the stale flowers, the cold cup of water on the bedside table. The terrible moment Isla realized the person who knew her first had left the world without telling her how to live in it. Another piano note sounded. Then another. A melody began in the hallway, soft and slow. Gideon struck a match. The tiny flame lit his face from below. Come with me, he said. No. Where? To the room beneath the stairs. Lenora left something for you. Why didn't you give it to me before? Because you had not heard the music yet. He moved through the dark with practiced certainty. Isla followed, because the voice in the hall had begun humming. They passed the portraits, their faces swallowed in shadow. At the staircase, Gideon opened a narrow door Isla had not noticed. Wooden steps descended into blackness. The air below smelled of wet brick and candle wax. Gideon led her down into a small cellar lined with shelves. On them sat ledgers, jars of blackened silverware, old room keys, and dozens of glass bottles sealed with wax. Each bottle had a paper label tied around its neck. Names: Maribel Lott, Ephraim Dale, June Osier, Thomas Quill. So many names. Isla touched one label and felt the glass vibrate faintly beneath her fingers. What are these? The ones who were invited. She snatched her hand back. Bodies? No. Names. Breath. Pauses. 9. Last words. Enough of a person for the house to keep calling. That is insane. Most true things are, until you have suffered them personally. At the far end of the cellar sat a small cedar box. Gideon lifted it and gave it to her. Isla recognized her aunt's handwriting on the lid. For Isla, when the song begins. Her fingers shook as she opened it. Inside was a cassette tape, a tarnished locket, and a folded letter. Gideon handed her a small recorder from the shelf. She wanted you to hear her say it. Isla placed the tape inside and pressed play. Static hissed. Then Aunt Lenora's voice filled the cellar, faint but unmistakable. A recording. A dead woman's confession trapped on tape. Isla, if you are hearing this, then I failed to die far enough away. A sob caught in Isla's throat. The tape clicked and whirred. I was 12 when they opened the Cypress Room for me. Your grandmother believed the house was holy. She believed the room chose special girls, Creed women, women with blood tied to Seraphine vein. She said the music was a blessing, but blessings do not leave scratch marks inside doors. Isla gripped the recorder. My sister heard the song first, your mama. She followed it in her sleep. I found her with both hands on the cypress doors, smiling like something was smiling through her. I pulled her away. I lied. I burned the guest book. I took her name from every record I could find. And when she had you, I prayed the blood had binned enough. The tape crackled. It did not. Above them, a door slammed. Dust fell from the cellar ceiling. Gideon looked up. The tape kept playing. The room feeds on wanting, grief, shame, love. It does not care which. It calls the living with the voices of the dead, and when the door opens, it gives them what they want, just long enough for them to step inside. Isla wiped her face with the back of her hand. There is only one way to stop it. Someone with Creed blood must enter the room carrying the first key, the one I sent you. Inside, behind the piano, is a wall of mirrors. Break the mirror that does not show your face. The tape warped. Lenora's voice slowed. Do not trust Gideon completely. Isla froze. Gideon did not move. He has kept the house too long. The recorder clicked off. For several seconds, neither of them spoke. Then Isla looked up. What are you? Gideon's face seemed older in the candlelight. Tired. That is not an answer. It is the truest one I have. She backed away from him. Lenora said not to trust you. Lenora was right. The cellar walls seemed to lean closer. Were you one of them? One of the people invited? Gideon touched the edge of a shelf. His fingers brushed a bottle with a label so faded it was almost blank. I was the first keeper after Hollis Vane. Not by choice. I came here as a deputy in 1936, looking for a missing boy. I found the room. The room found me useful. Useful how? It needed someone to welcome the grieving. Someone with a face calm enough to make a locked door look like hospitality. Isla's stomach turned. How many people have you led to that room? He closed his eyes. Too many. And now you want me to fix it for you? No, he said. I want you to end me with it. The words hung between them. Above, the piano began again. This time the melody was fuller, richer, impossibly beautiful. Isla felt it move through her body like warm water. It touched every empty place she had been pretending not to have. Her mother's voice came with it. Baby, I saved you a seat. Isla made a sound that was almost a cry. Gideon stepped toward her. That is not your mother. You don't know that. I do. You know the room. You don't know her. I know hunger. The music swelled. In it, Isla heard not just her mother now, but Aunt Lenora too. Heard her father, who had left when she was 9. Heard every person who had gone from her without permission. Come see what pain looks like when it is finished. The sentence slid through her mind like a hand into a glove. She understood then why people opened the door. Not because they were foolish. Because the room did not promise horror. It promised relief. Isla looked down at the key in her palm. It was old brass, blackened at the teeth. If I go in, she said, what happens to me? Gideon took a long breath. If you break the right mirror, you walk out. If you break the wrong one, the room keeps your wanting and gives your face to the next person who comes grieving. And you? If the mirror breaks, the house will remember what it did to me. That should be enough. Enough to free you? Enough to finish me. Isla almost hated him for sounding grateful. Another slam shook the house. The cellar door above flew open. Pale light spilled down the steps. Not electric light. Moonlight. But outside it was raining. At the top of the stairs stood the outline of a woman. Isla could not see her face, but she knew the tilt of her head. Her mother. Baby, the woman called. Do not make me wait again. Isla's knees weakened. Gideon did not look at the figure. Eyes on me, he said. I can't. You can. She sounds exactly like her. Of course she does. The dead leave echoes. The house steals them. The figure lifted one hand. Isla, come upstairs. I have been so lonely. That broke something. Isla stepped forward. Gideon caught her by the shoulders. Your mother fought her whole life to keep you from this place. Do not let the house wear her sacrifice like a dress. Isla stared at him. The words reached her when warning had not. Her mother's voice kept calling. But beneath it, almost hidden, Isla heard another sound. Scratching. from inside the Cypress Room. Dozens of fingernails, maybe hundreds. She closed her fist around the key. "Take me to the door." Gideon nodded once. They climbed out of the cellar. The house had changed. The foyer no longer looked abandoned. Candles burned along the staircase. Fresh magnolias filled blue vases. Music spilled from the hall. Laughter came from rooms where no one stood. The portraits on the walls smiled now, every painted mouth turned upward too far. The cypress doors waited at the end of the hall. The carved herons seemed to move in candlelight. Isla and Gideon stopped before them. The keyhole was shaped like an eye. From inside, her mother's voice whispered, "I forgive you." Isla flinched. Gideon's jaw tightened. "For what?" he asked softly. Isla swallowed. She had not told anyone. Not Lenora, not her friends, not the grief counselor with kind earrings and a quiet office. The night her mother died, Isla had been asleep in the chair beside her. Her mother had asked for water. Isla had heard her, somewhere under exhaustion, but she had not opened her eyes. She had thought, just 1 minute, just 1 minute more. By morning, her mother was gone. That minute had lived inside Isla like a blade ever since. Now the room pressed its mouth to the crack beneath the door. "Baby, I forgive you for not waking up." Isla bent over as if struck. Gideon said her name sharply. She lifted her head. Tears ran down her face. "It knows." "Yes." "How?" "Because you brought it with you." The answer was cruel. The answer was true. Isla put the key in the lock. The doors opened inward without a sound. The Cypress Room was larger than the house allowed. It stretched long and deep, with a ceiling lost in shadow. Cypress panels covered the walls, polished so dark they reflected candlelight like black water. At the far end sat a grand piano beneath a chandelier of bone-white glass. Behind it stood a wall of mirrors, each one tall and narrow, each framed in carved wood. The room was full of people, not fully seen, only impressions. A red suitcase near a chair, a gloved hand on a windowsill, a child-sized shadow beneath the piano, a woman's braid hanging down one mirror, though no woman stood before it. The air smelled of flowers gone sour. Isla stepped inside. Gideon followed, but the doorway groaned behind him. "Stay close," he said. "I thought you couldn't come in." "I can come in. I cannot leave. Not unless you do this right." The piano played by itself. Each key moved gently, lovingly, as if pressed by invisible fingers. In the mirrors, Isla saw versions of herself. In one, she was a girl in a yellow swimsuit, laughing before she learned how quickly joy could be taken. In another, she sat beside her mother's hospital bed, awake this time, holding the cup, saving everything. In another, Aunt Lenora lived, sharp-tongued and smoking on the porch, telling Isla not to cry like crying was a tax. Isla wanted every mirror. That was the worst part. She wanted the lies even knowing they were lies. "Which one?" she whispered. "The mirror that does not show your face." "They all show me." "Look harder." The piano stopped. Silence pressed down. Then her mother appeared in the center mirror. Not sick, not hollowed by pain. Young and beautiful, in the blue dress she wore in photographs from before Isla was born. She smiled. "There you are," she said from inside the glass. Isla forgot how to breathe. Gideon's voice sounded far away. "Do not answer." The woman in the mirror placed both hands against the glass. "Baby, I have missed you every day." Isla shook her head, sobbing silently. "I was there," the woman said. "I know you were tired. I know you loved me. I know 1 minute did not change that." Come here. Let me tell you with my own mouth." Isla stepped closer. Gideon grabbed her arm. The mirror woman looked at him, and her smile vanished. For 1 second, her face changed. Not into a monster. Into emptiness. A blank, starving absence wearing her mother's eyes. Isla saw it. Just 1 second. Enough. She stumbled back. The room shrieked. Every mirror filled with faces. Some pleading. Some weeping. Some smiling too wide. Voices rose together, each using a grief that belonged to someone else. Gideon shouted over them. "Find the one without you!" Isla turned in a circle. Her face multiplied around her. Child Isla. Broken Isla. Forgiven Isla. Wealthy Isla. Loved Isla. Isla with her mother. Isla with a family she never had. Isla untouched by loneliness. Then she saw it. A mirror behind the piano, half hidden by a velvet curtain. It reflected the room. It reflected the candles. It reflected Gideon standing behind her. But where Isla should have been, there was only empty floor. "There," she breathed. The piano bench slid across the floor by itself, blocking her path. Gideon moved first. He threw his shoulder against it, but the wood did not budge. The room spoke in her mother's voice, Aunt Lenora's voice, her own voice as a child. "Stay. Stay and be loved. Stay and be forgiven." Isla picked up a brass candlestick from the piano. The mirror with her mother cried out, "If you break it, I die again." Isla stopped. The candlestick shook in her hands. Gideon looked at her then, and for the first time, fear broke through his calm. "No," he said. "That is the hook." "What if it is her?" "Love does not ask you to die to prove you miss it." The words cut through the music. Isla raised the candlestick. Her mother's face in the mirror softened. "Baby, please." Isla closed her eyes. "My mother would have told me to run." She hurled the candlestick. The hidden mirror shattered. The sound was enormous. Not glass breaking. 100 lungs taking their first breath. Wind tore through the room. The candles blew out. The piano keys slammed all at once. The mirrors cracked one after another, spilling darkness, whispers, and the smell of river mud. Gideon staggered. For an instant, Isla saw him not as the man on the porch, but as he had been. Younger, soaked from rain, one hand on a deputy's badge, terror bright in his eyes. Then he looked at her. "Go," he said. The room began collapsing inward, wood bending, floorboards buckling. Isla grabbed his sleeve. "Come with me." He smiled, and it changed his whole face. "Miss Creed, I've been here since before your grandmother learned to lie. Let me be done." "No." "Go." The doorway appeared behind her, impossibly far and narrowing. Isla ran. Behind her, the room screamed in every voice it had ever stolen. At the threshold, she looked back. Gideon stood before the broken mirrors. Shadows curled around him like smoke. He removed his hat, bowed his head, and for one final moment, looked peaceful. Then the Cypress Room folded shut around him. Isla fell into the hallway. The cypress doors slammed. Silence. No music, no whispers, no rain. Dawn pressed pale light through the foyer windows. Mercy House looked smaller in it, older, empty in the ordinary way. Dust lay thick on the floor where polished wood had gleamed hours before. The portraits were cracked. The chandelier hung crooked and dead. Isla pushed herself up. The cypress doors were gone. In their place was a plain wall, water-stained and peeling. On the floor at her feet lay the brass key, and beside it, one glass bottle, broken cleanly in half. The label was so faded she could barely read it. Gideon Rusk. Isla carried the bottle outside. The iron gate stood open. Beyond it, Briarwater Road glistened beneath a sky the color of pearl. Birds called from the cypress trees. The dead fountain in the drive had filled with rainwater, and in its bowl floated white magnolia petals, though no magnolia tree grew nearby. She set Gideon's broken bottle at the base of the stone girl. Then she opened Aunt Lenora's locket. Inside was a photograph no bigger than a postage stamp. 2 young sisters stood on the porch of Mercy House. One was Aunt Lenora at 12, skinny and furious-eyed. The other was Isla's mother as a little girl, smiling shyly at whoever held the camera. On the back, in Aunt Lenora's handwriting, were 4 words. "We got her out." Isla sat on the wet steps and cried then. Not the sharp, panicked crying of the night before. This was older, deeper. The kind that seemed to come from the women before her and the women before them. The kind that made room inside the body instead of taking it. When she finally stood, she took the key to the marsh behind the house. Black water waded between the cypress roots. For a moment, Isla thought she heard music beneath it. A single piano note. Then another. But when she listened harder, it was only water touching wood, only wind moving moss, only morning. She threw the key as far as she could. It vanished without a splash. Isla walked back to her car and did not look at the upstairs windows until she was behind the wheel. In the highest gable, where the woman had stood in the photograph, the glass reflected nothing but sunrise. She started the engine. The road out of Mercy House seemed shorter than the road in. At the gate, Isla stopped. Someone had carved words into the inside of one iron post. The letters were old, nearly swallowed by rust. Not all doors are meant to answer. Isla touched the words once. Then she drove away. Years later, when people in nearby towns spoke of the old inn at the end of Briarwater Road, they said it had fallen during a clear morning with no storm, no fire, and no warning. They said the roof caved first, then the walls, then the porch folded in like tired hands. They said nothing was found inside except cracked mirrors, a piano with every string snapped, and hundreds of empty glass bottles lined neatly in the cellar, each one clean as if washed from within. They said a woman came once a year after that, just after dawn, and left magnolias at the dry fountain. They said she never stayed long. They said she never entered the house. But sometimes, when the fog rolled off the marsh and the cypress trees stood black against the morning, travelers on Briarwater Road claimed they saw a man in a dark suit standing by the gate. Not waving, not summoning, only watching the road. And if anyone stopped to ask for Mercy House, the man would tip his hat and say, very gently, "There is nothing for you there. Keep driving." Most people listened. The ones who did not found only ruins. No music, no voices, no door. Only the smell of rain, the hush of moss, and a strange feeling in the chest, as if something hungry at once stood very close and passed them by. This is the end of The Cypress Room. Thank you for listening to a Quiet Kabin production.